Good morning. It was a big week for two of Connecticut's biggest employers and their employees. Thousands of unionized electric boat workers ratified a new contract averting a strike authorized in mid-April. And workers at Pratt & Whitney plants in East Hartford and Middletown are now back on the job as of Wednesday, coming to terms on a 4-year contract that ended a 3-week strike. Here's what some of the workers had to say about that resolution.
We just want, fair wages, job security and pensions.
They stripped us of the $5,000 signing bonus.
This contract, I voted yes. Yeah, I think it's a fair deal. I thought it was a fair deal in the beginning.
I think that the company could have definitely done more for us. We got a lot of people that are hurting now.
Pratt & Whitney shared this statement with us about the agreement. Quote, "This is the outcome everyone was working towards, a contract that recognizes the skill and dedication of our workforce by keeping them among the highest compensated in the field while ensuring Pratt & Whitney is well positioned to secure jobs and opportunity for years to come. As Pratt & Whitney marks its 100th anniversary, this outcome reaffirms our commitment to the people, programs, and communities that have powered our legacy and will shape our next century of aviation innovation." Joining me in Studio A to talk about labor disputes between employees and employers, specifically in a time of notable inflation, is Dr. Nora Madjar. She's Associate Dean of Undergraduate Programs and an Associate Professor of Management at the UConn School of Business. Welcome.
Thank you.
We're happy to have you here because this has been so much in the news, both with Pratt & Whitney and the workers down at Electric Boat, so affecting many parts of our state. To see these two disputes in the headlines as a professor who teaches about this, before we get into each of them individually, were you surprised that they both came to this level of tension?
I'm not surprised because we live in uncertain times and workers are very worried about the cost of living increases, inflation, not only salaries but benefits. Housing in Connecticut is expensive, and at the same time, they hear that a lot of corporations have revenues, new contracts, and they don't see that their employers are satisfying their needs. So it's a moment ripe for strikes. So I'm not surprised that this was happening. Usually that's not the way to resolve labor contracts.
Well, and we saw in the Pratt & Whitney case, there was a 3-week strike. And in that case, it's 3,000 union members. And a lot of what they came to in the agreement is the stuff you probably teach your students about: higher wages, a 6% increase in the first year, and then 3.5%, and then 3 and 3, better retirement. But I thought the one thing that was really interesting was the continued operations in East Hartford.
Yes.
Is that a big deal, and is that unusual in your world?
I think it's a big deal and it's unusual because the workers maybe and the unions realize that they don't have as much power over the business. When a corporation could continue to operate, they still suffer losses, and it may be a disruption in their production, but it's not as effective when the workers could stop the whole production. So in this respect, I think Pratt & Whitney demonstrated that they still have power and influence over the situation. But the workers were also, after 3 weeks, their pay was affected, their benefits, healthcare was affected. So that was also an important factor to consider when they decided to go and
Well, and that puts, obviously, like you said, the workers walking off the job shuts things down for the big corporate employer. But the employees who are out there picketing, they feel it as well in their pocketbook. So is that part of the, maybe as you teach students who want to someday be in management, is that part of the sort of the balancing act?
It's important to look at the conditions under which the strike happens or the labor negotiations are happening and who has more leverage. Sometimes we want to resolve to negotiate directly on the negotiation table because we could come up with better agreements that are sometimes creative and integrative, and it's a win-win for both sides. At the same time, when employees see that their employer is not transparent or they don't trust that they will get the best conditions, they may use a strike as a way to influence the situation and to get better conditions. Especially in this case, one of the demands was to stay in Connecticut, which was an important demand that is satisfied.
Let's talk about Electric Boat, the draftsman union, 2,500 workers. Same thing, 30% wage increase over a 5-year contract, better retirement. That one, there was a strike authorization vote, but no actual strike. Sometimes that vote can be pretty powerful. Is that correct?
Absolutely, because that's a signal to the company that they're ready to go on a strike, and that brings them to the negotiation table with different conditions and different context, and they're ready to talk. I believe the labor market is still tight, and that gave the workers a little bit more power in this situation because they cannot easily be replaced. Electric Boat has new contracts for a lot of more submarines, and they're actively recruiting additional employees that gave a lot of leverage to the workers who were ready to strike.
And that maybe you can read my notes, because I was just going to ask you that. Governor Lamont, when he's been on the show, Congressman Courtney, who represents that district, they've talked a lot about needing those skilled workers. They're building nuclear-powered submarines. I mean, this is very highly technical work. Does that maybe change for them a little bit of the leverage?
Yes, because they cannot easily be replaced. That means the corporation doesn't have a good alternative right away. When it's a low-skilled labor and the labor market is not so tight and there is a lot of alternative options to hire new employees, then the businesses may not be ready to negotiate right away. But here, I believe the workers had more power.
Just tell me generally about unions right now. We've covered so much with what the Trump administration is doing and with tariffs and various things happening and uncertainty in some areas. And you mentioned that in your Pratt & Whitney answer. What just generally, because I saw a Slate headline that said America's labor unions are souring on Trump, AFL-CIO saying they feel like it's been a barrage of attacks. What's sort of just the general, what's it like to be in a union right now, I guess is my question.
I believe there is resurfacing and new interest in unionization. Social media helps unions and workers to unionize. We've seen it with Amazon and Starbucks workers. And the moment is ripe for unions to take advantage and leverage and kind of try to protect their members because they're afraid of uncertainty, structural changes. At the same time, employers afraid of tariffs and higher costs. They are trying to restructure. They may be trying to, and they are not ready to satisfy the employee demands right away because they don't know what's happening long term. Even if the profits and the revenue is high right now, they cannot rely on this long term.
It certainly is an interesting issue. We talked about two of the biggest employers in Connecticut, but 16 million union members around the country, and then you put families and brothers and parents and kids. A lot of people affected by this. Dr. Nora Madjar, thank you so much for being with us. Hopefully we'll have you back.
Thank you.